Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this IORMA webinar on market trends and a spotlight on the Nigerian consumer. Just to say a few words about the IORMA webinars and Ioma itself before we start the event, and I hand over to Juliana. The Ioma Consumer Commerce Centre is a neutral resource for businesses and governments that recognise their need to understand and respond in ways that recognise the need of global consumers and the way in which the 7.7 billion consumers are changing, both in the products and services they want and need and the ways they are currently obtain them. These changes are happening globally, driven by developments in society, in business and in technology. Now, the IORMA, the Global Consumer Commerce Centre, is trying to build relationships in the African continent. So if any of you are interested in engaging with IORMA after this event, please get in touch with IORMA at info@iorma.com. Just a slight housekeeping event. We are encouraging questions throughout this webinar. Please use the Q&A button for asking your questions rather than the chat box. If you want to use the chat box, that's fine. Please just limit it to chat between members of the panel and other participants. So without further ado, I'm now going to hand over to Juliana Ole-Inka, who's our very competent moderator for this session, and ask her to introduce herself and also to our expert panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David, and well done for getting my surname right. I've got two difficult surnames coming up, so forgive me. I am going to be your host over the next hour, and I'm really excited about this discussion because I know IORMA do have a presence in Africa, but West Africa, and in particularly Nigeria, is a region that cannot to be left out when we're talking about business and we're talking about consumerism. I'm Juliana Ole-Inka. I'm a journalist. I'm a Nigerian, British-based journalist, and I work for a channel called Channels Television. Channels Television is the largest network in West Africa. It's a 24-hour news channel, and I oversee the bureau here in London, and it has a keen interest in business. So a couple of our panelists have been on my show, and I said I'd love to get them together under IORMA's umbrella just to discuss consumer trends. So much has changed because of this COVID pandemic, and I do believe sometimes Africa can be kind of left out of that discussion. We can cast assertions without really understanding the nuance on ground, and I'm confident that the three individuals who are participating in this webinar will be able to break down some of that for us. One of them is David Smith, who I'll hand over in a minute. David will be great, I believe, in the next hour to discuss the importance of SMEs and the diaspora. The diaspora is so colourful, so huge, and they have a significant importance to what the trends are and translating those trends to the foreign market. Bolanle Olowokere is a great friend. Bolanle has a great corporate experience working in the banking sector, but she also has her own high-end luxury business where she deals with high net worth clients, and she'll be able to give us a real insight into that. And then there's Bolaji Shofowule, who is a consultant, a very senior business consultant working with government here and with businesses over there. I said I wouldn't introduce them, I have, but I would like them to introduce themselves. So let me please go over to David Smith. Please introduce yourself, David.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is David Smith. I'm chairman of British African Business Alliance. It's a diaspora-led business network where we focus on bringing forward the projects that our members have in mind. This can be anything from providing consultancy advice or access to consultants to representing business plans to funders and investors, and to stimulate the development of relationships on a Pan-African basis. There are many thousands of African business professionals in the UK. And just as an example, we got 12 people together in Devon, in Plymouth, in February, just before the lockdown started. It was our first meeting. We came away with a pipeline of projects worth $194 million coming out of Devon. What can Manchester produce? What can Birmingham produce? What can Newcastle produce? What could London and Reading produce? These are the opportunities of the diaspora, and I am constantly amazed by the power that the diaspora has. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Bolaji Shofowole, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bolaji Shofowole, and I am Managing Director at ETK Group. ETK has existed for the last nearly 10 years, and we've been helping businesses go from the UK into Africa, different market entry services from strategy all the way to implementation of projects. And we're really excited about Africa. We're we call ourselves Africa evangelists because we talk all about the opportunities that are present on the continent, but also we're well aware of the challenges and some of the issues that people have to face. So as a managing director, I lead a team of very enthusiastic individuals. We're spread across 9 countries and we have impact in 32. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here today.
Thank you, Bolaji. Excited to have you too. Bolanle Olowokere, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Juliana. Thanks, Bolaji. So mine is a little bit different. I feel like mine is kind of the fun part of today. So I own a company called Lux by B, which is a concierge and travel company which specializes in high net worth individuals. I manage their account for them, and I basically help them with spending their money in essence. But in terms of what I do for them is I help them go after what isn't normally out there, what isn't the norm. So apart from managing their day-to-day activities, if they want something that's different out there, that's what I'm here for. I am based in the UK, but my clients are Nigerian based, but they do come here often. So they're aware of me there. What got me into it is obviously I worked for American Express, and I was able to gain some of my clients and knowledge from there. So I have over 10 years of experience doing that. And of course, you know, I entered into travel on a budget travel kind of straight out of university, and I kind of felt a little bit held back a little in terms of creativity. And in the luxury market, you know, your passion can come out, your creativity can come out, and that was what attracted me into this role. So Lux by B has existed for about 3 years, off the back of what I was doing for American Express.
Absolutely brilliant. And yes, it is fun if you are able to share some of your discounts, if you get any of them. But without further ado, let's go straight into the discussion. I've got to say, really importantly, we do want to hear from everybody who's listening to us. So please put your questions in the Q&A chat box. There will be time, and I would love to hear from you. I'm going to start with you first, Bolaji, because of what the ETK group represent. And we know just how difficult it is to get into Africa, to start doing business in Africa. But that's the doom and gloom story that we're all aware of. I want to talk about some of the nuances here. So besides, talking about the security issues, besides talking about mobility issues, what are the other nuances that businesses or foreign markets that want to come into Nigeria and want to attract the consumer, what do they need to start putting their focus on?
Well, to start with, you have your short-term, the clients that are interested in the short-term gains in the market, and you have clients that are a little bit more future-focused and are looking at how they can make an impact in the long term. Well, a financial impact in the long term. And for people like that, we always point them to the fact that, look, in Nigeria, 65% of the population is below the age of 20. And so you have an amazing block of consumers that's going to come in the next decade. And so if you're looking at the long term, those are that's the first thing you actually need to consider. And then also we speak to clients about the fact that even though, you know, Nigeria's GDP, we know all the numbers and all of that, you have to look at the fact that there is a huge informal sector in Nigeria where all of these transactions, trade, etc., are not adequately computed, actually, or even taken into consideration when you're looking at the GDP of the country. And there are a lot of, also the other thing is there are a lot of infant industries that are rising in Nigeria at the moment. And so you find that consumer behavior is changing quite considerably, where people are beginning to want things that are made locally. And actually with foreign currency complications added to that, they're actually more interested in things that are made locally and that are potentially cheaper than what they have to buy outside of the country. So it's thinking about all of those things when I'm talking to my clients about being price competitive, about using their comparative advantage when they're looking at entering the market, but more importantly, considering the fact that this is a country with a huge population. And again, I'm the first person to concede to the fact that actually that huge population, depending on what you bring into the market, is actually hugely segmented. So if you have a middle class product, you're only looking at about 18 to 20% of the market. But even then, having said that, in a population of nearly 200 million, that's quite a considerable amount as well. So it's all of these deep, you know, kind of nuances that, you know, I present to clients when they're thinking about Nigeria specifically as a market enter.
Thank you for that, Bolaji. I think one of the key things you mentioned there reminded us is that 65% of the population is below the age of 20, which is, you know, it's a staggering figure, isn't it? And it's kind of, youth clearly is the future there. It's kind of what came first, the chicken or the egg question. But, you know, are foreign markets, are they researching beforehand? Are they looking at consumer trends? Are they looking at what's trending? Or are they kind of copying and pasting what's popular in the global north and just shifting it over into Africa and Nigeria specifically?
Well, this is the reason I have a job. Because when I go to see the clients, I try to encourage them not to think of things from a global perspective. They really do need to drill down to look at the market that they're focusing on. And Bolanle, actually, there's some fun bits to my to what I do when you're looking at some areas that are, you know, when you look at sort of media, the media industry and how it's growing, and you're looking at Nollywood, and you're looking at all of the interesting music and art that is coming out of Nigeria. And I think I usually try to get them to think, you know, to try to get them to focus on what the opportunities are in the local market. And that's where my job sort of really comes in, or my team. I keep saying me, it has nothing to do. My team is amazing. They really drill things down for our clients and make sure that they can see where some of the hidden opportunities are and how they can start to plan for the future as well.
Gosh, it's those hidden opportunities, isn't it? If you can write down some of those for me, I could be into making some money. David, let me come to you. Thank you, Bolaji, for now. David, the British African Business Alliance has been going on for a long time. I think a lot of significant leaders here in the UK from the African community are aware of you. You've been such a friend of Africa, specifically Nigeria. I want to know how those gatherings have evolved, because of course, you know, a community organization is unlikely to be able to compete with China, unable to compete with the EU and Britain as a whole when it comes to investing in Nigeria and Africa. But of course, you know, what you contribute is still so significant. So how have things changed? I think you're on mute, David. We're all on mute, are we? No, that's great. Thank you.
Things are changing very slowly, much too slowly in my opinion. When we started the British African opportunity, I thought that this was going to be easy. And like many things in Africa and to do with Africa, it's not that easy. And I think there are two words that come to mind that have been the biggest hurdles. One is trust and the other is confidence. Our original expectation was that we were building a chamber of commerce for Africans in the UK. Because of the fragmentation of the community, because of the lack of a chamber of commerce, and because of the missed business opportunities between UK and Africa. One of the first people I went to was the Confederation of British Industry, and they said, no, Africa's not on our agenda. The Confederation of British Industry did not have Africa on their agenda 10 years ago. So I think what we're beginning to see is the professionals in the African community recognizing that they have a role to play. British Chambers of Commerce said, no, you can't be a Chamber of Commerce for Africans in the UK. We don't deal in continents. Go and get a letter from the Trade Minister and the ambassador of every country, and we'll authorize you for each country. And I thought to myself, well, how many people from Burundi are going to be able to create a British Burundi Chamber of Commerce? And I think that one of the things that I've learned is that here we're all Africans, and I'll include myself in that. When we get on the plane, we may be Nigerians or Ghanaians or Kenyans. And when we get down to arriving in the capital, we're then focusing on the community that we come from, the area that we come from. And actually, that mentality is really quite hard. On your doorstep is one of the phrases that I use quite often, because there are British companies that don't know how to go to Africa. They don't know how to find Bolaji. They don't know what to do. And if you can imagine the finance director sitting there and the salesman comes in and says, sir, I want to go and spend 10 days in Lagos, please give me £10,000. It's a joke. The guy's going to say, no, what do you want to go to Lagos for? Dangerous place, dirty, dark, no. And we've got to get over that hurdle. And actually, the conversation could take place in their boardroom. They could interview people from Cameroon, from Zambia, from Zimbabwe, and understand what is going on in their market in those countries through the power of the diaspora. And that is a theme that I will return to. So what we're seeing now is huge potential. I mentioned Devon earlier. There are over 11,000 business professionals with connections to Africa in Manchester alone. They're not talking to each other. They meet in church, they meet at football or in the pub, but actually the business conversation doesn't go forward. And so what we're focused on is how do we engage with those professionals, identify the projects that they're bringing forward, and then start to solve the problems, the issues, the blockages that they're encountering. Yesterday, a Ugandan rang me and she said, David, I've been contacted by a Kenyan friend of mine. I've got a number of projects. How do I take them forward? And then terms of business, non-disclosure agreements. We start to put in place the building blocks that allows a conversation to flow. And as a result of that, we can identify what the opportunity is and how we can take it forward. British companies going to Africa, they need to go with a hand holder. And someone like Bolaji and her team would be absolutely brilliant. We have a number of companies looking at that. I'm in conversation with a guy from Kent who represents companies from Italy, who's saying, we're looking to develop new markets. So that takes us to Brexit. Brexit is going to change the relationship between British companies and their clients in Europe. But actually, it remains an opportunity for Africa to draw companies from Europe and companies from the UK to partner in the development of communities in Nigeria, for example. And what I hope our discussion today will touch on is more than Lagos, because I can see the high net worth individuals. I've seen the fancy palaces in Lekki. I've looked at it and I've thought, how is this sustainable? And the shocks of the last 12, 15 months, the drop in the oil price, the fact that there is now no core business in Nigeria is setting Nigeria back on its heels. And the bright, the smart, the enthusiastic, the energetic, are going to find the business solutions that are going to come forward and help to create things. Agriculture is key to that. So if anybody knows a grove of mango trees, there's a British company in Malmesbury in Wiltshire. They have a machine that will turn 1,000 kilos of mango an hour into juice, and you drive it from tree to tree. Now, that is amazing because you end up with pasteurized juice that you can sell to Sainsbury's if you have the right connections. You can sell it in the local market. It does tomatoes, it does passion fruit. You know, there are bits of kit there that are ready-made businesses. We're working with a state government who shall remain nameless. They've identified a need to build houses for essential workers. We're putting in place a $200 million project to build houses and to train young people in artisan skills. So the builders know how to build, the carpenters know how to carpenter, the plumbers know how to plumb, and the electricians are qualified to connect the wires in the right way. And there's a huge demand for that. And that's where I think the consumer market is going to come from, because sitting on the corner of the road, waiting for a mango to fall in my hand is not really a terribly enthusing future for a young Nigerian in any sense at all. Actually being able to turn that mango into money is something else. And Juliana, you were asking about opportunities, and I would suggest next time you're in Nigeria, you take a walk down any street and you will see the opportunities that are there. How do we solve this? How do we solve that? And so just as a tease to the panel, because I know we all have our separate interests, my personal target for Nigeria is over the next 3 years to create 700,000 new businesses, employing more than 10 people each. If you look at that, and if you look at the gap in the Nigerian industrial I can't think of the word, but sectors. You've got the major international companies. You've got the support companies in the major cities. And you've got the subsistence businesses. But outside the major cities, you have no SME sector at all. Very, very little. And that's what
I want us to come back to that. We've got a couple of questions, which is excellent, and I will be coming to those questions in about 15 minutes. Let's take it over to our fun panelist, Bolanle, and I want to bring it back straight to the consumer, because I know you do look after high net worth individuals, and I want you to just flesh out that relationship for us by letting us know, what are they buying, what are the kind of industries that these individuals are working in. Bolaji quite importantly mentioned the fact that a lot of people are interested in Nigerian made goods. Is this, when you get to a certain level of wealth, do you forego Nigerian made goods? Just give us a nice, let us dream a little bit at this
Indeed. So yeah, as per Bolaji's comment, I do find that when you get to a certain level, your tastes do change. So they are moving away more from the local. They are looking at the popular brands that everyone knows, the Pradas, the LVMHs, and things like that. In terms of what are they buying, I'd probably say, before COVID, you had people investing in their Hermes handbags because, as you know, Hermes are probably better investments than buying a house at the moment, even before COVID.
I don't think we know that.
We know there's a waiting list.
Now you do.
We know that much.
So yeah, so they were investing in that. Watches are very good investments as well.
Give us a kind of price, Bolanle, and who are the people that are buying this? Are these MDs of banks? Are these philanthropists? Are these people that have inherited money? And what kind of money are they paying for these watches?
So my clientele, they are in oil and gas or venture capitalists business. And they are looking at things like, you know, I bought Smes handbags for $295,000. My first watch that I bought for a client was $267,000 for a client. So those are the kind of values that we're looking at. To them, you know, it's 267 pounds. To us, it's a house. So those are kind of what they were investing in. Travel is also a big thing. Before COVID, obviously, I know that the travel and the hospitality industry has been hugely affected by COVID, but they're still traveling. You know, find they can't travel commercially, we're having to get them out privately instead. So COVID hasn't affected their travel. It's maybe limited them in maybe how many trips they take, but it hasn't limited their travel because, you know, luxury to an extent, it's not, it's more of it's an emotional need when you get to a certain level. So it's an emotional necessity, should I say, as to why I don't think luxury will be affected too much in, you know, how we progress on from here. Because there are still demands out there. It is limited a little in terms of the demands, and they're being cautious, but the demand is still there.
In terms of, because I don't want anybody to think we're being veneer at all, but it's really important because there is a growing upper high net worth class in Nigeria, and there are many foreign markets that are interested in capturing their spend. But are you finding that a lot of these luxury products are only available outside of Nigeria? Are they creeping their way in at all?
I think there's possibility to get it to Nigeria. The problem we have is changing people's perception and mentality. Based on my clientele, I won't find a client of mine buy a high net worth, handbag, for example, in Nigeria. They just don't trust that it's real. That's the problem. So there is the possibility and there is an opportunity out there, but it's just changing clients' perception that, you know, they need to move out of Africa in order to be able to buy the genuine items.
Very quickly before we move on, there are a couple of questions I do want to start looking at. But so trust appears to be a major concern. But then, you know, I've been in Harrods, I've been in Selfridges, I'm sure many of us have been. These brands, they are starting to understand the importance of the Nigerian consumer though, aren't they? You know, if you're talking about flying first class, if you talk about buying these Hermes handbags, you spot them at Wimbledon. Do you think they're now realizing that they have to market towards Nigerians the same way a few years ago, you know, the British High Street started marketing towards Arab money?
Definitely. I mean, LVMH alone are doing stuff to market specifically to Nigerians, because there was a survey done not so recently that, you know, brought Nigerians on par with the Russians. So they've had to change how they address it and how they market it to the African community.
And very, 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 very lastly, what is unique about the Nigerian consumer? What do they like? What do they not like for this high-end consumer?
It's interesting. David touched on it earlier, which is trust. For me, the attraction for my Nigerian clients is actually the trust factor and the privacy factor, and also the privacy. Contrary to popular beliefs that Nigerians like to flaunt it, they actually value their individual lifestyle. So that's probably what's unique about my clients.
Okay, thank you very much. Do any of the panelists want to jump in there before I go into the Q&A?
Yes, so I'd very much like to jump in there. So one of the various hats that I wear is I do a bit of guest lecturing, and I guest lecture at Sotheby's Institute. And I do talk about luxury consumers in that space. And I find that the students are always completely, you know, overwhelmed by some of the things I tell them happened in Nigeria. But having said that, that's the 1% of the 1%, really. But when you look at some of the Nigerians that are actually earning considerable income, sort of, you know, north of sort of $30,000, $40,000 a year, what you'll find is that they're now sort of patronizing local luxury brands. So local, what you and I will call high fashion. Some of these brands have had international exposure. Some of these brands have walked in New York, they've walked in London, in Milan, you know, and so Nigerians are actually getting a taste for that. They're getting a taste for local luxury. And this is a trend that's actually spreading across Africa. It's this thing they call the spirit of Ubuntu, where everyone is sort of looking at, you know, what do we have? We invented luxury. We are the descendants of Mansa Musa, the richest man ever recorded in history. Whose servants wore silk, you know, and this is kind of, you know, this is something that's emerging amongst those who actually have the disposable income to buy local luxury brands. And I'm actually quite encouraged by that, you know, just seeing some of that. But obviously you have the 1% of the 1% who are still buying the 250,000 Maybachs as well. That's
eye-watering stuff. It's really important, actually, and thank you for that, Balaji, because you made me just remind myself to connect all of this together. And one of the reasons why we're having this discussion is because the Nigerian consumer is such an important part of consumerism, and our trends, our likes, our loves, what some would say, you know, a mother would wear in the kitchen to cook jollof rice is now being seen on the catwalk. You know, Stella McCartney, Selfridges, you know, they're taking on these designs, and now we like in the continent is being showcased across the world, and no less than Nollywood. But before I digress, I can see David was rubbing his hair. Oh, he's got his fingers up now. Go on, David.
I just want to pick up on the silks discussion. Right.
You know, a man who can get some silk.
You wanted an opportunity. So we're working with one of our Ugandan members who is mentoring a farmer in Uganda who is planting mulberry bushes and wants to turn it into a silk farm. So suddenly there is the concept of silk being developed in Uganda. And when we were talking about it the other day, the idea of getting that onto the tables of African designers in Uganda or in Nigeria, these are the sorts of things that nobody is thinking about. But actually, you can grow the mulberry bushes in Nigeria, you can make the silk, you can process the silk, and then suddenly there is an aspect to the Nigerian fashion industry that isn't coming from China.
Absolutely, very important. I'm going to go into the questions now because we've been flooded, of course. You know, we're talking about Africa, there's interest. First question to either of the panelists. Really important, actually, news story. This is from Vikas Bauer. ShopRite is exiting Nigeria after many years. It's the South African retail chain. What impact does this have on potential new investments in the country, as well as confidence in the market? We'll keep it brief because we've got quite a few questions to get through.
Can I go first?
Okay.
I don't think it has any impact on confidence in Nigeria. The confidence in Nigeria has been shocked by many other things, and ShopRite is actually probably responding as much to the difficulties that they're having in South Africa as anything else. I worked with a British retailer once who tried to have outlets in 6 outlets in the UK, 1 in Edinburgh and 1 in Southampton. And just the logistics of trying to operate at that level. So what I would say is the infrastructure that ShopRite have put in place is there for some Nigerian retail entrepreneur to pick up and to develop a Nigerian supermarket brand of your own.
One of what I clients. Go on,
Sorry, Jelana, if I might just add to that, I'm just so excited by what he said because he's right. And it has been snapped up by a new owner. And actually what the new owners are talking about is continued expansion across Nigeria. And we must not forget that. I think ShopRite is also exiting from Kenya. This is what I'm quite aware of. I think they want to focus a lot more on their domestic activities because ShopRite South Africa, on the other hand, their they did extremely well in the last year, their financial results. So I think it might just be a question of exiting. They've been in Nigeria for close to 10 years, if I'm correct, and are just going, or just moving out. And this happens all the time. Companies exit from countries.
I've got to say, Bolaji, they do serve. I've been to ShopRite, and I know most people have been to, the major ShopRite, I believe, is between Lekki and VI. But they do serve a community who like to shop in places like that. They don't want to go to the market. They want a Western style mall. Yeah. And some people, but does the Western style mall work in Nigeria? I know retail has had a massive boom over the past decade in some snippets, sectors of society in Africa, but does it work? Because, there were a couple of people that can shop in there, but most people can't. And Bolanle, to drag you in on this, would you see the likes of LVMH, putting up a store? We've seen MAC, we've seen JD Sports, I believe Nike Town. There are some that are going there, but do you think we'll see a more luxury brand taking
Definitely, and I hope they do. I have clients, it's not as luxury as we want, but we have clients who've now brought in Aviana slippers in Nigeria, which is a start. And I think it means that there's progression and people are opening up to it. And of course, the fact that, digitally we're getting better as well. Since COVID, you'll notice that the increase of payments online is increasing, and I think that can only better that service, and people will have more trust, because in Nigeria, as you know, a lot of people don't trust their credit cards being used for anything. Yeah. But now that they've had to, they've now had to trust the banking system and everything else, and I think it opens up doors for everything else as well.
Absolutely. Bolanle said that, so we'll get a designer and a new ShopRite soon. There's another question here. At a previous IORMA Africa webinar, a participant suggested that many people in parts of Africa felt that the UK had abandoned its historic interest in Africa in favour of continental Europe. Does the panel agree with this?
Can I take that one?
Please, because I know you were at the UK Africa Investment Summit, which was held in January, hosted by Boris Johnson, his first international summit.
Yes. I'm also a UK export champion. I will tell you that actually I would agree to a certain extent that we did take our eyes off the ball, and the likes of China and the rest of it were coming in, swooping in and taking most of the business. I would also say that our strategic sort of plan towards Africa, as David sort of alluded to earlier, was actually quite patchy. Just very recently, 10 years ago, it was extremely patchy. And I think with the noise that some of us have made over the years, I think the government is finally coming to realize that that Africa is really the place to be at this point in time. Some people say they're late to the party, but I disagree. I think there's still opportunities for British business in Africa. I think what's great is the fact that obviously due to its colonial past in Africa, it does have quite strong ties with a huge swath of the continent. So from a language perspective, also in most cases, from a legal compatibility perspective. And so I do think that there is opportunity for British business to still go in and make an impact. But I would partially agree with the fact that we had abandoned expansion into the continent, which is probably one of the arguments for the British government sort of wanting to take back control of going out and making trade agreents, again,
Brexit, you can say.
Well, I was trying to avoid the B word, but there we go.
David, I know you're itching there. Go on. Do you agree with that?
Not entirely. I think that the question needs to be split into two parts.
Yes.
The British government was told to go away at the time of independence. It maintained diplomatic relations, and the relationship became very, very different. And what tends to happen when you tell a UK person to go away is that they generally go away.
Were they though?
Well,
I know you've got three
this
Nigerian women here.
No, but
David.
I think that that's what generally tends to happen in a commercial sense. If you look at it from the commercial side, British businesses didn't leave at the time of independence. Some of them will have failed during the difficulties of the years after independence, and some of them will have been replaced by Nigerian businesses. But then you have to say to yourself, it's actually Nigeria that changed its position, and in many ways, Africa that changed its position. And it said, we don't want to do anything more with the colonials. We want to do it for ourselves. And that's fine. But actually, the invitation is now coming out from Africa. We've tried China, we've tried India, and actually we'd like to come back to Britain because we have confidence in the engineering. We know that what we buy will be delivered to the terms of that particular contract. And I think that that's the more exciting part of what's going to come over the next 10 to 15 years, as Britain regains its foothold in Africa. I think it's very easy to conflate the government position with the commercial position, and they're very different.
Yeah, no, they are very different, and that's a good point. I've got to say, you know, for those who are listening, you think Juliana, step in. There are some people that would say, you know, that relationship transition, but Britain have always had their foot in Nigeria. They never didn't. But the nuance of that response, David, is really important, and I think. You know, we're all in Britain, and we love the relationship that we have with Britain, and anything that Britain can do to, you know, to help evolve business on the ground is great. Bolanle, very quickly before we move on to the next question, what is it about Nigerians and their first-class shopping trips here? What is it they like about Britain? We've mentioned, you know, the legality issues and just the historic ties. Is it the schools? Is it the food? What is it that pushes Britain above the edge of America when it comes to Nigerians coming?
Better. Sorry about that. I'd probably say it all comes down to trust. We within ourselves, we don't trust each other as to why business isn't staying within Nigeria. And I think that's something that we could work on for us. I mean, now is the time for entrepreneurs to come out and actually be able to do something in Africa. But in terms of why we tend to come to the UK for the shopping aspect, I would have to say it's got to do with the legacy that we've built. You know, even when you have Nigerians come here to shop, you know, they would rather shop at Harrods rather than John Lewis. John Lewis is just as good, but Harrods has that legacy that we all know and love. We know that, you know, they are the Queen shops there, you know, and things like that. And we're chasing the status. And I think that's something that we as Nigerians like to follow, and that's why I would say that they come here in terms of shopping. Of course, the schools are great, but so it is in the US as well with Harvard. So yeah, I think in terms of shopping though, I think we chase status quite a bit. You will notice that a lot of Nigerians fly more with British Airways because it's the Queen's airline. You've got Harrods because of, you know, the legacy that it's held.
Okay, great. Let's ask, there's a question here. What are the available supports for UK-based entrepreneurs to flow their businesses in Africa, especially in Nigeria? That's Rosalind Majekodunmi. That's David and Bolaji's turf, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Let me go straight. I had a conversation with a British Nigerian gentleman from the Department for Business, Energy and Infrastructure on Wednesday last week. He wanted to talk to me about how we could introduce BAME businesses to the department so that they could stimulate the take-up of the funding available from the government for BAME businesses in the UK. So that's one area of support. I was talking with one of our UK companies today who is putting together a project in Nigeria. They're going to get a grant to build a test site for their technology, and they're looking for a site for it. We've connected them with a site, and now the conversation is going on over exactly what's going to happen there. So there is a grant that they're able to access, so other people will be able to access. I would be looking at the Department for International Development website and looking at what they have for Nigeria and the programs. I would also be looking at what the Innovate UK website has for those sorts of things. And then depending on the sector, there may be stuff that is in the social enterprise area, and you should be looking at the foundations and charities that are supporting works in that area. Some of them are very specific, some of them have very demanding specifications, but actually they should be no more demanding than an average business plan, which is that if you're going to take someone else's money to market, then you've got to convince them that you've got the right idea and the right capability. So there are funds there. I would also say that on a commercial basis, there's no shortage of funds for Africa. What there is a shortage of is quality plans. I was at a DIT investment event in December. They had a panel of 7 investors, and the consensus of those 7 was they did not get enough quality plans. They also were not looking at the diaspora because you're stairways.
On that note, let's pass over to Bolaji for a response on that. Thank you, David.
Thank you, David. David has mentioned quite a number of the schemes that are available from the government, but one thing I always encourage people to do is speak to the DIT, the Department for International Trade, and get an international trade advisor to guide you. Because
that sounds like a massive wall to me. Sorry to interject.
Yes, oh, go on. Please go on.
We're talking about Africa. Going to, if I'm an entrepreneur, you know, and I've been selling through social media, but I'm doing pretty well, or I'm a consultant. Going to the Department for International Trade, it seems like a big wall.
Actually, they're quite accessible. You know, I think that's a complete perception that a lot of African entrepreneurs particularly have in this country. And I have been actually helping quite a number of my clients who are actually Africans, but in Britain, that are trying to expand either through franchise opportunities or direct sales or whatever it might be. I have always introduced them to the Department for International Trade, because what they then do is appoint them an international trade advisor who would actually come into their offices, well, pre-COVID, come into their offices, sit down with them, create an export plan. And actually, if you're in this region, most times they pass them back on to us, because we're then able to do the practical things on the ground on their behalf. So there are ways, and then to add to that, there are grants that actually pay for our services on top of that. So there are
fear. Is it there's something, it's fear, isn't it?
Yes, I think it is.
Fear of the unknown. It's you know, are they going to understand my business? I think we've had this clash, haven't we, between Africa and Britain.
It's a mental block. It's a mental block, and it's something that I'm very passionate about at the moment. So talking to particularly Africans in diaspora, making them, encouraging them to find all the possible help that they can from the British government, because a lot of these people are British, you know, but then, you know, they don't, for some reason, they don't feel they have access to these services. So that's one of the things that I really do. I do encourage them to go to their local chambers, because they will then sort of also provide them with some support that they need as well. And you know, I think David has mentioned all the key areas that they can go to: Innovate UK, the growth hubs, and all of those things, and they can get as much support.
We can collate something and share the details on IORMA's website, because I know this is such an important topic. And in fact, I did actually want to talk about the business plans, which we can't do because there's no time, but that's another issue. You know, the way you communicate that business plan may seem fine if you're in Africa, but when you're putting it in front of a British government official, it doesn't work. So I think there's translation as well that can be lost. Let's move on.
Okay.
Okay, so Francis Akpan Inwang is saying, the presentation seems to be mostly marketing based. How can HR professionals and administrators play a role or have an impact on marketing and consumer trends, or be involved in the process, as most webinars and or Zoom interactions seem to exclude or discount the skills or role of support functions within the organization? For example, most of the business webinars or Zoom meetings, in my experience, have not highlighted the requirements of support functions in the achievement of overall business objectives. We were just talking about this. Please.
Well, again, it's down to sort of, again, services usually complain quite a lot that sometimes when you're talking about exports or opportunities in new markets, that you're mostly talking about products, you know, and so they feel sort of left out from the discussion. But actually, one of the key areas that British companies are known for is services. You know, we are known for services. It's one of our hugest competitive advantages.
80% of GDP is services.
Yes, 80% of GDP is services. So actually, it's a huge export. It's a huge British export. And again, I say, get the support that you need from your local international trade advisor. Contact people like myself, like David. Find out how you can plug into those opportunities that are service-based. And we will definitely help with that as well.
Thank you. We're running out of time. David, briefly on this.
Very quickly on that one. One of our members is the Occupational Safety and Health Association, originally out of Nigeria, but forming groups all over Africa. Health and safety across the continent is in appalling state. It is down to HR managers and other professionals to bring the qualities that are now accepted internationally into African markets. Sometimes it's going to be really difficult, and sometimes it's the employee themselves that will take the risk because they want to make the money. But something's got to give, something's got to change, and it's in this area.
I've got to bring you in, obviously, Bolanle, because this is services, and I think this is really where, you know, the Nigerians with money would rather spend outside, because we're not focusing on it, are we, in country?
No, sadly we're not, and David said it right. We need to work on it. So that's where we're lacking. But yeah, you're correct. That's something that we're very good at here in the UK, and something that our clients are used to getting. And I feel that they feel like they get a different level of respect as well when they come over here to the UK to be serviced. That's another reason why they would spend their money here in the UK rather than within Africa.
Okay, we'll take two last questions before I hand over. The fact that there's so much interest shows that we are going to have to do this discussion again, hopefully in a month's time, because it's so important, and I think it's important for the IORMA audience as well to understand, you know, this discussion in depth. Right, Natasha Donmez, if only one panelist could take this, please. What are your thoughts on the food and drink sector opportunities in Nigeria, Mr. Mango? Asking with a specific interest in whiskey and gin exports to this market.
I would suggest that it's a very healthy market to explore. There are obviously well-established brands, but in a market that's growing from 200 million people to 400 million people over the next 30 years, you'd be foolish not to be getting your toe into the market at this stage. Mm-hmm. Someone like Balaji would be able to provide all the right support and development services to enable that market to be explored with eyes wide open.
Okay, last question. There's so many questions. Oh, I feel so terrible about this. Right, Naomi Bari. In my experience of hand-holding engineering firms with opportunities in Nigeria, I found that most were reluctant to take on any opportunities. However, there was a drastic 360-degree turn during the recent recession when all firms were extremely enthusiastic to look at some of these opportunities. I'm interested to know what the current situation is like. Are British firms more open to business with Nigeria than they were 10 years ago? Or is this still considered so high risk that most choose not to invest in opportunities in Nigeria, bearing in mind that there is growing security challenges in the country? How has this affected investment opportunities? I said one, there's like 5 questions. Well done, Naomi. Bolaji, shall I hand that over to you?
I suppose it's a glass half full sort of scenario where you look at the impending security issues, you look at the the growing divide between rich and poor, and you look at all of these things that are happening in Nigeria, and sometimes it does feel a bit frustrating and actually outright depressing. But there is, again, like I said, there's a glass half full sort of way of looking at things, where you're also seeing a lot of government intervention, where they realize that in order for Nigeria to actually have that international comparative advantage, they need to intervene in certain industries such as agribusiness and processing, and sort of adding.
I'm sorry, I've got to cut you, and I hate doing this, but I'm running out of time, because IORMA is so smart. They make webinars an hour. It's just not enough, but just enough so we don't get bored. Thank you all to the panelists, David Smith, Bolaji Shofowale, Bolanle Olowokere. It's been so great having you. I must very quickly say that IORMA are having a webinar on Thursday, the 20th of August. I'm not hosting, at 2 p.m. on how technology is changing healthcare. I am saying to them that we are going to have to revisit this discussion, because there's so much to discuss. And, you know, Nigeria cannot, and Africa can't just be put under one bracket. There's so much, but at least we wanted to give you guys a taste of the consumer market and business, and the fact that the diaspora, we are doing our best to kind of bridge that gap. So thank you so much. I will hand over to David. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Juliana.
Thank you very much, Juliana, and thank you to all our panelists. We've had a very lively discussion. It's been very insightful, and personally, I feel
David, you were popping in and out there. Your internet connection. Let's hopefully it'll be great for you to end.
Okay. Well, I hope you can hear me. I just want to say thank you very much to Juliana and to all of our panelists. I think it's been a great discussion, very insightful, and it's made me very enthusiastic about, excuse me, my tooth was falling out again. It's made me very enthusiastic about the opportunities in Nigeria in particular. And I very much hope that we will be able to organise another panel session with all you great guys involved in that. So thank you once again. I'm going to close down this webinar now, but when I do, I would just like to ask you, when you log off, could you please fill in the after webinar survey for us and give us feedback for what you think of this event. The event has been recorded and it will be made available in the next day or two. And we will try to answer any of the questions that were not able to be dealt with by our fantastic panel. So thank you once again, everyone, both participants and panelists, and we look forward to seeing you at future IORMA events. Thank you.